I decided to surprise my wife on her fishing trip because lately, something between us had changed. For 12 years, Emily and I had shared everything. We laughed at the same old movies, argued over which restaurant to visit, and spent quiet evenings sitting on our porch with coffee in our hands. I believed our marriage was strong because we had survived difficult times together. But during the last few months, Emily had become distant. She smiled less. She kept her phone turned face down. Whenever I asked what was wrong, she would kiss my cheek and say, "I'm just tired." Then, one Friday morning, she told me she was leaving for a weekend fishing trip with her coworkers. Just a few days by the lake, she explained while packing a small bag. No work, no stress. I need some fresh air. I didn't question her. Emily had always enjoyed fishing, and I wanted her to have time for herself. I hugged her before she left and watched her car disappear down the street. But that evening something happened. While cleaning the kitchen, I noticed a small piece of paper on the floor near the counter. It looked like it had fallen from Emily's bag. I picked it up and saw the name of a lake written on it. Pine Hollow Lake. Underneath was the name of a lodge. I smiled. The place was only 2 hours away. Suddenly I had an idea. What if I surprised her? I imagined arriving with her favorite coffee and a small box of chocolate. Maybe we could spend the weekend together. We had both been so busy that we barely had time to talk. Perhaps the surprise would remind her how much I still cared. Early the next morning, I packed a few things, bought her favorite coffee, and drove toward Pine Hollow Lake. The weather was beautiful, sunlight reflected off the road, and I played songs from the early days of our marriage. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. I pictured Emily's face when she saw me. Maybe she would laugh, maybe she would run into my arms. Maybe everything would feel normal again. When I reached the lake, I followed the road toward the lodge. The area was peaceful, surrounded by tall trees and quiet water. Several boats were tied near a wooden dock. I parked and walked toward the front desk. "Good morning," I said. "I'm looking for my wife. She's staying here for a fishing trip." The receptionist smiled politely. "What's her name?" "Emily Carter." The woman looked at the computer. Then her smile disappeared. "She isn't registered here," she said. I frowned. "Could you check again? I'm sorry." "There's no Emily Carter." I felt confused. But I wasn't worried yet. Maybe the reservation is under someone else's name. She said she was here with coworkers. The receptionist searched again. "There is a group staying in the cabins," she said, "but I don't see that name." I thanked her and walked outside. Maybe Emily was camping somewhere nearby. Maybe she had given me the wrong lodge. I pulled out my phone and called her. To answer, I sent a message. Surprise. "I'm at Pine Hollow Lake. Where are you?" The message was delivered, but no reply came. I walked toward the dock and looked around. A few people were fishing. Families sat near the water. Everything seemed normal. Then I saw Emily's car. It was parked behind a row of cabins. My heart jumped. I walked closer, carrying the coffee and chocolates. Her car was unmistakable. I had washed it only a few days earlier. She was here, but why wasn't she registered at the lodge? I followed a narrow path behind the cabins. Voices came from a small wooden cottage near the trees. I heard laughter, then I heard Emily. I stopped. She sounded happy. Happier than she had sounded in months. For a moment I smiled. Maybe her coworkers were inside. Maybe she had simply forgotten to tell me which cabin she was staying. In I walked toward the cottage. But before I reached the door, it opened. A man stepped outside. He was tall, wearing a fishing jacket and carrying 2 cups of coffee. Behind him, Emily appeared. She was smiling. The man handed her one of the cups. Then he gently touched her arm. My body went cold. The coffee and chocolate slipped from my hands. The cups hit the ground. Emily turned toward the sound. Her smile disappeared. "Daniel?" I couldn't speak. The man looked from her to me. "Who is this?" he asked. Emily's face turned pale. "That's my husband." For several seconds, nobody moved. The man stared at me, confused. "Your husband," he repeated. Emily stepped forward. "Daniel, please, this isn't what you think." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Then tell me what I'm supposed to think." She looked down. The man quietly walked back into the cottage. Leaving us alone, I pointed toward the door. "Who is he?" "His name is Ryan." "Your coworker?" "No." "Then why are you here with him?" Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. I felt anger rising inside me. "You told me this was a fishing trip. You said you were with coworkers. I know you lied. I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what." Her eyes filled with tears. The truth I waited for months. I had noticed the distance between us, the secret phone calls, the late nights, the way she avoided my questions. Every fear I had tried to ignore was standing in front of me. "Are you in love with him?" I asked. Emily closed her eyes. No. The answer came quickly, but I didn't believe it. Then why? She looked toward the lake. "Ryan is my brother." I stared at her. "What, my older brother?" "You don't have a brother." "I do." The anger inside me suddenly changed into confusion. Emily wiped her eyes. "My mother had a son before she married my father. She gave him up when she was young. Nobody in our family talked about him. I said nothing 3 months ago. Ryan contacted me." She continued.
"He found me through an old family record."
At first I thought it was a scam, but we took a DNA test. She looked toward the cottage. "He's my brother." I tried to understand. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what? That you would think I was lying, or that you would ask questions I couldn't answer." I was still trying to understand everything myself. I looked at the cottage. "So this wasn't a fishing trip?" "No." "Then why bring him here?" "He wanted to meet somewhere quiet. He lives across the country." This was the only weekend we could both travel. I felt embarrassed. I had arrived expecting to discover betrayal. Instead, I had discovered a secret that had existed long before our marriage. But something still didn't make sense. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "I know. Why did you become so distant?" Emily looked at me. "Because finding him changed everything." I started questioning my whole life. My mother lied to me. My family kept secrets. I didn't know who I could trust. Her words hurt. "And you didn't trust me." "That wasn't it then." "What was it?" She stepped closer. "I was afraid that once I told you, you would look at me differently." I shook my head. "Emily, I came here because I thought I was losing you." Her expression changed. "You came all this way." "I brought your favorite coffee." We both looked down. The coffee was spilled across the ground. The box of chocolates was crushed. For the first time that day, Emily laughed. Then she started crying. I walked toward her. "I'm sorry." She whispered, "I'm sorry too." "For what?" "For assuming the worst before asking you the truth." She hugged me tightly for several minutes. We stood beside the lake without saying anything. Then the cottage door opened. Ryan stepped outside. He looked nervous. "I think I should introduce myself properly," he said. I nodded. He held out his hand. "Ryan Daniel." His handshake was firm. We spent the next few hours together. Ryan told us about his childhood and the family that had raised him. He showed us photographs and documents that explained everything. The story was complicated and painful, but it was real later. We sat beside the lake while the sun disappeared behind the trees. Emily leaned against my shoulder. "I should have trusted you." She said yes. I replied. She looked worried. "But I understand why you were scared." She smiled. "Are you angry?" I was, and now I looked at the water. "Now I'm just glad I came." The fishing trip had never been a fishing trip. The surprise I planned had revealed something completely different from what I expected. I had driven to the lake believing I would uncover a betrayal. Instead, I found a man who had spent his entire life searching for his family. But I also learned something about marriage. Trust does not mean never feeling afraid. Trust means speaking before silence becomes a wall. It means asking questions before creating answers in your mind. Emily and I returned home the next day. The drive was quieter than usual, but it was a peaceful silence. She held my hand for the first time in months. She didn't hide her phone. She didn't look away when I asked how she felt. And I didn't pretend that everything was instantly perfect. We had difficult conversations ahead, but we were having them together. A few weeks later, Ryan visited us again. He brought fishing equipment. Emily laughed when she saw it. "So now we're actually going fishing." Ryan smiled. I thought it was time to make the story true. That weekend, the three of us sat beside Pine Hollow Lake. We caught almost nothing, but we laughed more than we had in years. Sometimes the truth arrives in a way you never expect. Sometimes what looks like betrayal is actually fear. And sometimes the person you think is hiding from you is simply waiting for the courage to let you in. I had gone to surprise my wife, but when I arrived, I discovered a secret that changed all of our lives. And somehow that unexpected trip didn't end our marriage. It brought us closer than we had ever been.